controls are preventative in that they're used before the pests become a problem. Some farmers refer to these cultural controls just as good farming practices. These cultural controls can be size appropriate in that not all cultural controls are practical for all sizes of farming operations. Many of them should be used on farms of all sizes. Some of these cultural controls are practices that we need to encourage, but there's also some practices that need to be avoided or minimized in order not to flare pest problems. In this short video, I plan on outlining some of the common and useful cultural practices, again, for vegetable producers. Crop rotation is one of the first cultural controls that we need to use. For insects, this is particularly effective against insects that overwinter as immature stages in the soil and will remain immatures the following year when they resume feeding on roots and stems of plants. Pests that can be managed with crop rotation include corn rootworms, wireworms, and white grubs. But this is also effective against Colorado potato beetle and strawberry root weevils. However, pests that emerge as adults after overwintering are not usually affected by crop rotation. With crop rotations, it's critical to rotate between plant families. In this photo, we have a solanaceous crop of tomatoes being rotated with a cucurbit crop in the background. Early soil preparation is also very important. Fields should be worked and the soil prepared 2 to 3 weeks at least prior to planting or transplanting. This provides time for plant residues to begin to break down. This can be very effective at reducing losses to seed corn maggots and cutworms. As with crop rotation, soil preparation is practical for farms of all sizes. Another aspect is sanitation, and sanitation takes many different forms. Sanitation is key when it comes to destroying crop residues. After harvest, there's usually a lot of crop residues that are left behind. These are really a smorgasbord for many of the insect pests. They're still feeding and developing on these crop residues. Destroying these crop residues helps to reduce winter survival and pest levels for future generations. This can be used against a wide variety of pests, including onion maggot, squash vine borer, squash bug, Colorado potato beetle, corn earworm, cabbage worms, and even stink bugs. Tillage, mowing, and composting can be used as sanitation techniques to get rid of this residue. The sooner this is done after harvest, the more effective this can be to reduce future pest problems. Another aspect of sanitation is open dump and coal piles for crop residues and off-grade produce. These can harbor pests and can be a source of pest problems. For example, coal piles can be sources for onion maggot flies, filth flies, and other pests developing on volunteer plants. Covering these areas with plant debris and straw will help to speed the breakdown of these materials and reduce pest breeding. Another aspect of sanitation is regular and effective weed control around vegetable plantings. This helps to manage flea beetles, plant bugs, and stink bugs. This has to be done regularly throughout the season in order to reduce pest breeding on these weed hosts. Weed control can be accomplished through regular mowing or herbicide sprays. Another cultural control is the use of planting dates. You should use appropriate planting dates for the crop you're growing. Seeding crops should be done according to soil temperatures that promote rapid plant germination and emergence. This can help to reduce losses to wireworms, cutworms, and seed corn maggot. Planting dates will also help to determine the risk for migratory pests such as the corn earworm. Corn earworm overwinters near the Gulf Coast and has to migrate northward each year. If we plant our sweet corn early, we can often completely avoid infestation by this pest. But corn that's planted so it matures just a month after those early plantings can be 100% infested. So planting date can be used to avoid pest risk, or it can be used to identify plantings that are at higher risk. Varietal selection is another tool. When we have certain pests that occur year after year, we need to look for varieties that are resistant. A good example would be finding corn varieties that have complete tip coverage. These are going to provide resistance to sap beetles and bird damage. Tight fitting husks or tight husk leaves will also limit the extent of damage by corn earworm. Cover cropping can be used to sustain pollinators and natural enemies of pests on the farm. In this photo, you see a buckwheat southern peas mixture that has been drilled as a cover crop. This increases natural enemies and has been shown to slow or prevent the development of some pest populations. Banker plants are types of companion plantings that can be used to build and hold natural enemies as well. In this photo, buckwheat is used to provide nectar to parasitic wasps that attack European corn borers and peppers. Banker plants are frequently used in greenhouses to manage aphids. Farmscaping is a modern term used to describe companion plantings. Sweet alyssum is another flowering plant that has been shown in research trials to enhance natural enemies. This graph just shows how these companion plantings aided a parasitoid release. We had higher levels of parasitism where we had buckwheat to provide nectar and pollen for the adults, and that resulted in fewer damaged peppers in the field. Row covers can be an effective tool to exclude a wide variety of pests, including flea beetles, cabbage worms, squash bug, cucumber beetles, Colorado potato beetle, squash vine borer, and stink bugs. In order for cover crops to be effective, they need to be in place before the pests have a chance to colonize the fields. Row covers need to be secured around the edges. You can use a variety of different materials to secure these so the pests can't get under them. It could be sandbags, bags of rock, paving stones, or even lay flat that's laid down the length of the field and filled with water. The advantage to the lay flat, it's easy to scale this up for larger fields. It's less expensive and it takes less labor. Various materials can be used for row covers. On the right here, we have a spun-bond material. On the left, we have a woven netting. One of the advantages to the woven netting is that these tend to last longer, 5 to 7 years, and they don't increase the temperature underneath the row cover. The spun-bond material on the right has been shown to increase daily temperatures by as much as 25 degrees. Row covers are not without issues. We have found that when we do employ them, that mite and aphid problems are more common underneath these row covers, and they need to be managed carefully. This is just some data from several years ago showing that when we use row covers with finer mesh sizes, we had less damage to pepper fruit from stink bugs. And so size of the netting, it can be very important. Another cultural control is the use of reflective plastic mulches. This is a silver-coated plastic reflective mulch. It's used to reduce colonization by thrips and aphids in the field. This usually helps during the first 2 to 4 weeks after transplanting. After that point, the plants tend to cover up the reflective mulch and they lose their effectiveness. With some insect vectors of plant diseases, this has been shown to delay infection by those pathogens. And this is just some data from a couple of years ago showing different reflective mulches. The different bars reflect the color of the mulches. And you can see that the gray bars definitely had less winged aphids that were colonizing the plants during the first few weeks after transplant. Another cultural control is the use of hand picking. It can be very effective early in the year when adult insects are just beginning to colonize plantings, but have not yet had a chance to lay their eggs. These insects can be crushed or knocked into a bucket of soapy water. The best time to do this is often early in the day when the insects are still sluggish before they're warmed up by the sun. This has been effective with Colorado potato beetle, Japanese beetle, harlequin bug, and other stink bugs. Trap cropping can be used to intercept pests before they have a chance to reach the crop that you want to protect. In this photo, we have a pepper planting that is surrounded by a trap crop of sunflowers and Japanese millet. In New England, we have trap crops that are used to protect melon and cucumber plots. The trap crop they use in those areas has been blue hubbard squash. And this is just some data showing how effective the trap crops can be. Again, they don't eliminate the pests in those fields, they just reduce their numbers. The orange line reflects the numbers of stink bugs on peppers without a trap crop. The blue line reflects the number of stink bugs on peppers when it's surrounded by a trap crop. Last thing I have here is just a picture from the handout that I sent around to everyone. So this has various pests on the common vegetables grown in Kentucky. We have their threshold levels for treatment, their cultural controls, insecticides that can be used by home gardeners, and insecticides that are appropriate for small and moderately sized commercial farms. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.